freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 113, we have Kim Ehrenhaft. She's NACFE's design director and trucking industry marketing consultant, where she talks about her career in the trucking industry, the work she does now for NACFE, the role of graphics and infographics, and what makes an infographic successful. We also talk about the value of run on less and what it brings to the trucking industry, and we peel back the curtain about what happens at the visits to the participating fleets. Today we have joining us Kim Ehrenhaft. Kim is the design director at NACFE, and she supports other companies as well in the trucking business, and I'm really excited to spend some time with you today, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, so I always start this, and it's named Mike Roth and Friends. So let's get that out of the way first, so I don't forget it. I've been doing this 110 times, I think. But do you remember how we met and became friends?
We met through Denise Rondini. I know that. She's working for NACFE, and I was looking for some part-time work. So she introduced me to you, and then I think the more that we talked, the more that we became friends.
We were having a lot of our design work and our web work was being done by RMI, and we actually had a few other contractors doing a little bit here and there, either through Rocky Mountain Institute or by ourselves. And Denise and I were talking and say, we ought to be bringing this in-house. We're getting a little bit bigger and so forth. And I got to tell you, Kim, I thought that was going to be a long battle, but you came in and instantly were helping us look good. And I got to tell you, that happened much smoother and faster than I expected. And I think it's just basically because that's a real good skill of yours, and I think a passion. And I think, when been working with you, I feel the most energy from you when you're creating graphics.
Yeah, part of my being is I feel I always have to be creating something or making something, whether it's doing design work or doing some kind of arts and crafts or or cooking something or baking something. I always feel that I'm not me unless I'm making something or creating something.
I think at NACFE, one of the things I pride ourselves on, all of us do, and really our stakeholders and customers and people that read and work and need our efforts. We've always said we're going to do videos and we're going to do graphics and we're going to do very direct and easy to read executive summaries, and we're still going to do the detailed reports. But you've sure helped us in those early ones. Really doing a nice job of helping us explain what we've learned and written in long reports. So great to have you on the team. So you've been around the trucking industry for a good while, and just tell us about your career. If you want to go back to your education as well, just tell us a little bit about your career and why you've decided to stay in and around trucking for a lot of it.
Sure. I decided to be a journalist very early in my life. I took one class in high school and I was like, this is it. This is it. No more math for me. No more science to me. This is the thing. So I went to college and I studied magazine editing and production. So I learned all about how to make magazines, to write and edit and those things. And actually, I got my first job in trucking as an intern in college because I had to have an intern job that paid money because I couldn't work without being paid because I had a lot of personal bills for college and things like that. So
Sure.
my first job was with Denise Rondini at Truck Parts and Service and Successful Dealer Magazine. And I worked there as an intern.
Well, I certainly hope you and Denise are friends. You've been you've been working together for quite a while.
We've been working together since 1991. So yes, we are friends.
Wow.
But so when I was interning there, they told me that we don't have a job for you. We just don't have the money. We don't have the space, blah, blah, blah. And then I interned for them again another semester. And by the end of that, they hired me and I worked there for 14 years. So
And where was that?
Truck Parts and Service and Successful Dealer Magazine with Kona Communications.
Wow. Yeah.
So I kind of got really into the trucking industry and got to know the people and how it works. And it's just a great industry and a great bunch of people. And then reflecting on it a little bit, I realized that my grandfather was a trucker. I didn't realize, I just didn't think about it in relation to this, but my grandfather was a trucker and my stepfather he drove for tanker for Shell. So it's kind of been somewhere in my background.
I hear that quite a bit, whether I'm doing this podcast or just out and about. There are a lot of truck drivers. I don't have the number on the tip of my tongue, but it's in many states, I believe it's like top 2 or 3 or even the number 1 job by numbers in some states. So there is a lot of us. I always joke that a lot of us played with trucks and toy trucks and sandboxes, and that's what got us into the trucking industry. I think there's a little of that, but there's oftentimes a family member. You can go up, CEO of major companies, and they would answer that question the same way you did. I mean, I have a uncle or a cousin or a grandfather that drove a truck. So,
My cousin also, he worked for Hendrickson and then Waste Management as well, so him and I had a lot to talk about too, so
what outside of work makes you tick? You said a little bit ago you like creating things, even if it's cooking and so forth. But yeah, what when you get stressful and you just got to walk away, what are the things you do? I'm just interested.
I'm a huge music fan. All kinds of music, doesn't really matter. I just love music. There's a few kinds I don't particularly like, but for the most part, I have a pretty eclectic music taste. I have some friends who are singer-songwriters, so I go see them a lot. That's one of the big things. I like to read a lot. Though lately with all the amount of reading I've been doing for NACFE, I haven't been reading a lot outside of that.
Yeah.
Um, but those are main things, and family and friends are very important to me. They've gotten me through a lot of things, so I like to spend as much time with them to build me up as I can.
Excellent. Yeah. And that whole creation, and whether it's, I've seen you create artwork and this, that, and the other. I mean, that's directly attributed to the design job. So, how do you tell us about what you do for NACFE? We've got the design work in particular, and then you also end up being someone a lot of the team goes to for help in a bunch of other areas, including some of our trip logistics, and you'll be the primary lead person at each of the sites we go to with Run on Less. But just tell us what your role is here, both the maybe the formal one and then the all the other things you do.
Sure, well, let me start a little bit about design in general. I in my career, I was gonna be a writer. That was what I wanted to do, and then somewhere along the line, I fell into design, and that became my passion, and I learned more to do it with truck parts and service and successful dealer magazines. While I still edited, but mostly did the design, and then it brought me to where I am now with designing a lot more than writing. Although I do still do some writing and a lot of editing, but so for NACFE, I started doing a lot of the administration stuff and being a support for events and things like that. And then, like you said, we needed someone to do more design work, and I was able to step into that role very quickly. So I do a lot of the design work. I do all the design work for things that go out for NACFE, like from social email graphics, and the newsletter to how the website looks. I work with our website team very closely, and I design covers and executive summaries for the reports, and infographics, which are one of my favorite things because they're much of a challenge trying to get a lot of words expressed in a quick, simple visual graphic.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute because I said a few minutes ago that we typically take 100 to 200 page report are kind of common for us. We know that very few people are going to dig in and actually read that full report. So the executive summaries and the graphics and so forth are really important. So kind of from a true design standpoint, what makes a good infographic or graphic? Because I think you already said one thing, you can't include everything about that topic or about that point in the whole storytelling of what we found in a report because it'd just be too much. That's what the report's for. So the infographic has to or the graphic has to be well done, but also there's that trick I think that you keep bringing up of how you make it simple, not a lot of words, the right sort of icons and graphics and all that. So just like when you're working on that, what are some of the things that go through your head to make it successful? And maybe what are some of the traps to avoid?
That's a very delicate balance. I mean, almost every time I do an infographic, people in general want to put too many words into it. Not just at NACFE, but other companies I work with also. Like, I want to get these 10 pages of text into this graphic. And I was like, no, no, you have
Yeah.
to simple to the point. Like, what's drill down to like the most important point that you want to get across. And then you have to think about within those words, like what graphic would represent that. And sometimes it's not necessarily the one you think of immediately. It could be something a little more abstract to try to get your point across. That's the hardest part is I usually spend a lot of time. I read the text that I'm sent, but then I spend a lot of time thinking about what could represent this maybe in a different way that would be interesting. And all the graphics I start looking through online, that's part of the longest part of these for me. Once I find the graphic that I want, I'm like, bam, I got it. I'm ready to go. But a lot of time is spent just looking at things online on like stock photo sites and on other design programs and things like that. And even sometimes looking at other infographics from other people just to get some basic ideas of what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, when I think about our process here at NACFE, it's going out and talking to the early adopting fleets, the manufacturers support them, like the village of stakeholders that help them, be successful with these technologies and deal with the challenges and the adverse consequences. And we go out and learn all that, and then the project team or the report team or run on less teams, they get into the like the real data and quantitative work of all that. And so, those teams are, we even joke at NACFE, okay, Rick Mihelic and, Ken North and Jeff Seeger, those are the numbers people or the data people or the facts and figures folks. And then, we always joke that Denise is the word lady or the word person on our team who's going to
Smith,
help us tell that story with words. Right. And then your graphics or pictures or I think it's graphics is the right term.
yeah.
And it's always fun for me, kind of to watch all that happen and throw in my 2 bits here and there. I mean, I quite frankly call me an educated engineer that loves to tell stories. So we're telling stories through the facts and figures, through the words, and then through the graphics, and then maybe finally the videos, or they may be a subset under graphics. But uh, you know, it's a package, I think. And if we keep thinking about that as a package, that the graphic doesn't need to tell everything. It doesn't need to, like you said it really well, it doesn't have to say the whole 10 pages, but it's got to fit with the 10 pages.
Well, the infographics job is really to present an idea or a concept that says, "Huh, that's interesting," and make the people wanna read more, to get that hook in. I mean, I think that's what was interesting about how we led to our popular comics graphics from the, Run on Less Electric Depot. We had, you know, 4 findings that each had sub-bullets on them, and I'm like, "I can't put this into one graphic. There's no way this is gonna work without it being too overwhelming, too hard to read." So I was like I said, I was just looking through different kinds of ways to present things as like bar charts or, different ways to present several ideas in one place. And I came across a comic pane and I remember sending it to you and I was like, what do you think about this? And all you said was, okay, give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't say no,
Right.
but it just didn't strike me, as my first reaction, to be very blunt with you. And if you haven't seen this, go on to Run on Less Electric Depot reports, and you'll see. I think we ended up with 6 or 7 different panels of these, comic sort of ways of telling findings. My first response was, no, no, no. This is a very serious topic with lots of people needing and wanting to see this data. And, it's electric trucks and there's controversy here and there, and we're not going to turn that into a comic book. But I trusted you and I trusted the process, and Denise and I were together and we both just kind of sat and looked at it and thought about it, and it made huge sense. And I think it was a very successful effort, and exactly what we're talking about here with blending facts and figures and words and executive summaries and so forth with graphics. I think you did a great job with it, and I think we came up with a really good piece. I mean, I showed that at the White House, and on a huge stage at ACT Expo, so they were very popular and well done. And I think there does need to be a little bit of creativity and chutzpah and guts in some of these that will pull people in to what you just said was the objective of a graphics. That'll pull people in. I mean, as soon as to me, it looked like the old 1960s Batman TV show.
One of my favorites, coincidentally.
Yeah, you probably had a little inspiration there. But that pulls people in. And so I think, and I don't know, maybe if you're listening to this, I think this would be actually a recommendation from Kim and I and NACFE. I mean, the video is sort of the commercial for the report. It doesn't need to explain a whole lot other than what we're doing and how we did it, who were some of the key people we talked to. And then I think these, the graphics as well as the executive summary sort of is a way to spend, 20, 30 minutes with our work to see how it applies. And then the detailed report can be read by the true experts that are really into the details.
Yeah, I think the infographic is a good hook, it's and what you wanna keep in mind when you're doing something like that is this is a sad comment to say sometimes, but, your average audience for the trucking industry is middle-aged men. It's changing a little bit now as there's more women involved, but, um, what's gonna be a little bit different now, there are younger people coming into the industry who have a different view of things, right, which is how kinda the comics landed. I landed with the comics, but, you had to figure out what's different that's not something they've seen a million times before. That's the hard part with infographics because there are so many and
Yeah.
so many different kinds, and just finding the right hook for the right thing for the right time, is a very important step in this whole process.
Yeah, and so tell me about the light bulb moment where you're like, "Yep, that's exactly what it is." I mean, the moment before you end up sending it to me, tell me how, why. I mean, what do you go through? I mean, is that truly like a light bulb moment? Like, wow, this is exactly what I was thinking for, and or it sounds like that's the way it is as you talk about it.
It depends. Sometimes the author of the report will send me a little hand-drawn graphic, which is helpful. They can't draw, which is fine, neither can I, but at least gives me an idea to jump a jumping off point rather than starting from scratch. If they have an idea, then I can run with it and make it a little bit better. Or like I said, a lot of time it's just having some kind of concept in my head of what I'd like to do, and then looking for graphics to match that or convey my idea, and sometimes, I gotta tell you, it doesn't work. I sometimes end up doing things 2 or 3 times thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be great," and I do it, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not it."
Yeah. Yeah, you've sent me a few options before. I mean, dramatically different look and feel to the graphic, and there's been times where I've said, option D, no way in hell. Option A doesn't make sense at all, at least to my growth. I mean, I'm not the only person we're doing this for. But there's always one that makes sense. And sometimes maybe it's, developing one that you don't fall in love with that just doesn't prove to be the best one. So yeah, it's very,
Right.
very interesting.
A great example of this was the Run on Less Depot fleet cards. Like, I did them early, and, the cards that we present before we put up the profiles on our website to show what fleets are in the run and what kind of equipment they carry and whatnot. I had this concept and I had it done for a long time, and I had like 3 others in that file that I had worked on but kind of passed on, and I'd shown you the one I wanted to use, and we all agreed on it, and then as I was going through the file, I looked at this other one, I said, "Nope, this one's better."
Yeah.
I sent it to you guys, and you said, "Yeah, but it is better." So,
Yeah.
I had settled on something, and then after, putting it away for a while and looking at it again, sometimes that's how it works, and I think I've said to you several times, like, I'm working on it, but I'm stuck, so I'm walking away for a while, and that brings a different perspective to it. You quit grinding on it, which is getting you nowhere, right?
Shifting gears a little bit, we're right in the middle of our fifth run on less. A couple things I'd like to ask you about. One is, I mean, what do you think the value of run on less to the marketplace is? And then secondly, let's peel back the curtain a little bit. You're about to travel to of the 13 fleets all across the U.S. and Canada. So tell us a little bit about your particular role in the run, including a hell of a lot of social media that we'll be doing, and the graphics and so forth. So one, what's the value of running less to the market, and then what will you be doing in particular?
More or less, I think a lot of people assume that it's not real, that you're doing, like demo trucks or test trucks, or you're creating the environment, like you're controlling the environment. And that's absolutely not true. These are like what we've said before, these are real trucks, real fleets running on real routes, carrying real cargo. And we get to see how they perform. So there's no assumptions being made. Sometimes we can figure out what some of the findings are going to be, or at least have an idea. But other times things come that are not what we expected. And I think that's a great benefit to the industry to know that we're actually doing work that's real and on the ground and boots on the ground kind of thing.
I think you're right. It's between the sort of engineering testing world of let's eliminate variables and try to focus on things, and just the sort of the chaotic. Okay, there's a truck, and what does it do, and so forth. It's real world. It's real people. So when we go out and do these interviews, we talk to the truck drivers and the maintenance people and the people that have engineered and sold the trucks and serviced the trucks and maintain them and so forth. So, we're one step removed from the actual people doing this work. And I think that's pretty, and then we record it and show the world. So that's,
And we're transparent about it.
right, right, right. So that gets into like, tell us about a typical visit, uh, and your role the last time with Run on West Electric Depot, and this one again is to be sort of the producer of the day that we're there doing all this filming and beginning to figure out the data collection and make sure we understand the technology, battery electric truck, natural gas truck, et cetera. So just tell us a little bit about how NACFE does that and what your role is in those visits.
Sure. Well, the first run that I was involved in was electric in 2021. And I did a lot of the back end work. I did a lot of the graphics and a lot of all that stuff, which I still do, obviously. But that was pretty much the extent of my role, was just being a backup person. And then as we started talking about it over the next couple of years before Depot, and I had problems with some of the photos that I had. Not that they were bad photos, but there wasn't a variety of them for all the different places that we were using them. And between talking to you and Dave and some other people who were on the visits for the other runs, the previous runs, you said, well, it's hard for us to keep track of what we're doing and make sure we get everything and do that and do that and do this and do that and whatever, and talk to everybody. So it kind of like a little bug in my head, and I talked to Denise about it. Maybe we need someone else who's not extremely involved in the interviewing process or the photography process, but someone who knows about photography and graphics and visuals, to be there to help guide things the way they need to go and make sure everything gets checked off, all the boxes get checked off.
This is a classic. You didn't know you were volunteering, but when you complained about something, we said, "Well, then, if that's what you want to do it yourself."
And I don't mind that. I think that's part of I'm a very detail-oriented person, so that kind of works to my left brain rather than my right brain, which is the whole balance of doing this design work. You have to have something. Design is very subjective, and sometimes you just need something that's very, okay, there's only one answer, there's only one way to do it, to get you to help your right brain work properly. You can't just be all out there with all this creative stuff. So, at least for me, that's how it works. I have to have some things that are very rigid, to help me with the creative part.
That's why we may lean towards right brain or left brain or creative or data or, multiple answers versus one, scientist versus artist. We all lean one way or another, but we are both, and we kind of need both of those to do things well. I think is what you're saying. And I understand that a lot.
Yeah.
So,
But the site visits are very regimented. I mean, we have a schedule of who needs to be interviewed and when. I think what I've brought to the table here is helping get people prepped ahead of time. Like, okay, you're up next. This is going to be over in 5 minutes. Let's get ready. And hunting down people, 'cause sometimes they're off talking to another colleague or they're somewhere else or whatever. So, um,
yeah, this filming is interesting. We always do it in the summertime. It seems to always be hot. We want to do it at the site or at a site. So it could be a truck stop or a truck depot or some warehouse. And we want the drivers to be with their trucks. We want the maintenance people. So we filmed inside truck cabs, outside cabs, at docks, along freeways, along power lines, along freeways. I mean, but it's always, like you said, it's chaotic. Our film crew is always looking to help tell the story that we're hearing on site. So we have to have a little bit of flexibility. It is wild, but that is some of the secret sauce to the videos and all the things that you see when you see Run on Less and when we do the show of the run in September. So we learn so much at those visits
we
because
do.
out there really talking to the people like we made it that make things happen, like we've always said.
And that part has helped me a lot too from the design standpoint. Like, I kind of understand the fleet a little bit more, what their goals are, and it helps me to have all that background information. I wouldn't imagine that it really would have, but it does for me to know a lot of things, a lot more parts of the run than just what I've been told.
Hey, Kim, our time always flies by, but you're seeing this transformation in trucking, whether it's to, higher mile per gallon diesel trucks or some of these alternative fuels and some of these big transitions to, electric trucks or hydrogen fuel cell. I mean, if you were to or I'm asking you, how do you kind of do your work with all that dynamics going on from the traditional trucking world to a really different one that we're starting to see? We call it the messy middle, but how do you do your work and how do you stay focused, and maybe any suggestions for the audience that we have here to close this out?
Ooh, I try to read a lot of newsletters, so I at least read the headlines so I know what things are going on with our industry, what the hot buttons are in the industry, so I can try and direct my designs toward what's gonna catch their attention. Being aware of what's going on in the industry and being able to tap into that on these site visits is a great booster for me.
We're lucky to have you, Kim. Appreciate you being on.
Thanks, Mike.
Freight efficiency with NACFE's Mike Rosen Friends.